The city of Bogotá doesn't sleep. Its lights flicker like nervous eyes, and its alleys whisper stories that the sun is too afraid to hear. In the southwest corner of the city, past the markets, past the buses with shattered windows, past the neighborhood they call La Zanja, there was a child. He had no documents, no school record, no last name anyone remembered. Some said his name was Andrés, but others just called him El Muerto, because it looked like his soul had left him long ago. He didn't cry like the other kids. He didn't beg or talk much. He'd just sit and stare at the wall like he was waiting to be erased. That's how a local priest remembered him. Andrés was maybe 9, maybe 10. No one really knew. He was found sleeping behind a dumpster of a panaderia, his arms wrapped around a rotten bag of bread like a teddy bear. He never met his father. His mother, when she was sober, called him pedazo de infierno, my little piece of hell. She was addicted to bazuco, a poisonous mix of cocaine residue and kerosene, known in the slums as the drug of the dead. Sometimes she'd disappear for days. Other times, she'd bring home strange men who smelled of sweat, blood, and gasoline. When Andrés was 6, he watched one of those men beat his mother until her nose bent the wrong way. He didn't cry. He just waited until the man left. Then he took a knife from the kitchen and carved the man's license plate into his own forearm, like a scar that would never forget. At age 8, he saw his first corpse, a teenager, shot in the head just outside the market square. The blood made a patter on the sidewalk, like a broken crown. Most kids screamed. Some ran. Andrés just watched. He didn't move, didn't blink. He stared at the boy's face for 10 whole minutes, like he was trying to read a book in the eyes of the dead. The police came late, laughed, and moved on. The body stayed for hours. By then, Andrés had already memorized everything. The color of the shoes, the way the blood ran sideways because of the slanted pavement, the hollow sound when a body stops breathing. That was the day something inside him disconnected, and no one, not even God, would plug it back in. In La Zanja, kids didn't have dreams. They had enemies. By age 9, Andrés was already a veteran of street fights. He didn't fight to win. He fought like he was trying to disappear. He stole cigarettes, mopped floors at a brothel, took leftover scraps from the trash pile behind the butcher shop, where he would later earn his nickname. A social worker once tried to take him to a shelter. Andrés spat in her face and walked away without a word. There's a story the locals tell about Andrés. One night, a pack of wild dogs cornered a crying toddler in an alley. Everyone else froze, scared to get involved. Andrés didn't freeze. He picked up a rock, screamed louder than the dogs, and beat one of them bloody with his bare fists. The others ran, but he didn't check on the toddler. He just sat there, panting, blood on his hands, staring at the dead dog like he saw himself in it. No one thanked him. No one came for the child. Not then. Not ever. By age 10, Andrés had learned 5 unbreakable laws. Never trust a hungry man with a smile. Pain means you're still alive. Bullets talk louder than words. If you love something, you better bury it. Names don't protect you. Fear does. And it was fear, not love, not hope, not family, that opened the first door to his destiny. Because one night, a black motorcycle pulled up beside him, 2 men wearing masks. Andrés didn't run. He just asked, "What do you want?" The man on the back lifted his visor. He smiled. "You're not scared of dying, are you?" Andrés didn't blink. "I've already died," he said. "I just haven't stopped walking yet." The man chuckled. "Good. You might be useful." Bogotá sleeps with one eye open. Its shadows aren't empty. They're full of deals, lies, corpses, and kids who should have been in school. Andrés was 10 when he first rode on the back of that motorcycle. No helmet, no questions, just a cold wind slicing through the holes in his jacket, and the city flashing by like a memory trying to escape. The man driving, known only as Mono, didn't talk much. He worked for La Compañía, the most feared local cell of a paramilitary drug syndicate. They operated like ghosts, efficient, brutal, and always watching. Mono didn't say where they were going. He just said one thing. Tonight, you stop being a stray. But only if you don't blink. They arrived at a butcher shop, closed, no lights. Inside, there was a man tied to a chair, bloodied, breathing heavy, barely conscious. Mono handed Andrés a small flashlight. Then he handed him something heavier, a silver revolver. He stole from us, Mono said. Your job is to listen, watch, and learn what happens to thieves. Andrés stood there, the flashlight shaking slightly in his hands. Mono circled the man like a shark. Then he carved something into the man's cheek with a knife, a message to others, a warning. The man screamed. Andrés didn't flinch. He just watched. Mono turned to him, scared. Andrés looked at the man's bleeding face. No, just wondering why you don't just shoot him. Mono smirked. Bullets are loud. Pain is louder. Later that night, they gave him a mop and a bucket. No words, no explanation, just blood on the tiles. He cleaned until sunrise, silently, carefully, like a monk in a chapel. When he was done, Mono tossed him a hot arepa wrapped in newspaper. You passed. Passed what? You didn't puke. You didn't cry. You stayed. That's more than most men twice your age. Andrés took a bite. For the first time in years, he felt warm food in his belly. It tasted like metal and victory. Over the next weeks, Andrés became a ghost for La Compañía. He ran errands, delivered envelopes sealed with blood, watched drop points, studied faces, learned who was loyal and who was living on borrowed time. He never asked questions, never talked too much. He earned the nickname El Niño Fantasma, the ghost boy, because no one saw him coming, and no one ever remembered he'd been there. One day, Mono handed him a phone and said, "You're going to follow this man. Don't let him see you. If he meets anyone suspicious, take pictures. Come back. If you screw up, don't come back." Andrés didn't screw up. In fact, he was better than any adult they'd used before. Too small to notice, too quiet to detect, too damaged to fear consequences. His first kill, without a gun, it happened by accident, or maybe fate. Andrés was watching a man for La Compañía, a low-level snitch who was planning to skip town. The man caught Andrés tailing him, cornered him in an alley, pulled a knife. Andrés didn't run. He picked up a broken bottle and jammed it into the man's neck. Just once. The man dropped, choking on his own blood. Andrés didn't run. He waited until the man stopped shaking, then walked home like nothing happened. Mono didn't ask questions, just looked at Andrés and nodded. You're in now. Blood in, no out. That night, they tattooed a tiny X on Andrés' shoulder. It wasn't ink. It was gunpowder and ash mixed with a razor slice. Andrés didn't scream. The older men nodded with respect. The boy doesn't feel pain, one of them said. He's not like us. No, Mono replied. He's like the war. Cold, unstoppable, and necessary. There was a ceremony of sorts. Underground. No candles, just shadows and steel. A row of young initiates stood shirtless in front of a wall. Each had to prove their loyalty. Some cut their palms. Others swallowed bullets. Andrés? He did something different. He walked to the center, dropped a dead rat he caught earlier that day, and bit its head off. The room went silent. One of the lieutenants laughed. He's not a boy. He's AF ***ing animal. From that day on, Andrés wasn't called El Niño Fantasma anymore. He became known as El Carnicero, the Butcher, not because of what he'd done, but because of what they knew he would do next. That same week, Andrés was given a backpack. Inside, a pistol, a photo, and a name. He looked at the picture for a long time. The man in it had a scar across his cheek, just like the one Mono had carved weeks earlier. Andrés understood. It was time. Time to graduate from Ghost and become the shadow that haunted men before they died. Bogotá was quiet that night. Too quiet, like the city itself knew what was about to happen. Streetlights flickered like dying stars. In the distance, dogs barked and then fell silent. Andrés walked alone, a backpack over his shoulder, a pistol inside, a photo folded and worn. The man in the photo had a name, Carlos El Gordo Menezes, a money runner for a rival faction, a loud man, a drunk, a coward. He owed La Compañía 30 million pesos. He didn't pay, so they sent a boy to collect the debt with a bullet. Earlier that day, Mono gave Andrés the details. He drinks at El Bravio around midnight. Always parks his red pickup in the alley. Wait till he's pissing drunk. Make it clean. One shot. Head. Don't miss. Andrés didn't ask why they were trusting a child with a kill. He didn't ask for backup. He just asked, "Do I walk away or run?" Mono looked him dead in the eye. You walk. Runners look guilty. Killers walk. 11:47 p.m. Andrés sat in the shadows near the bar's rear exit, watching. Sweat dripped down his neck, even though the air was cold. His hands were steady, but his heart, it pounded like war drums. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't practice. He was about to end a man's life. The thought didn't scare him. It confused him. Why didn't it scare him? Was he broken? Or was this what power felt like? 12:18 a.m. Carlos stumbled out the back door, laughing, lighting a cigarette with trembling fingers. He was alone. No guards. No backup. No clue. He zipped his fly, turned around, and there was Andrés. Small frame. Black hoodie. Eyes cold like cement before a storm. Carlos didn't even reach for his gun. What the F? Bang. One shot. Right between the eyes. Carlos dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Andrés stared at the body. A single trickle of blood rolled down Carlos' forehead, soaking into the ground like wine into holy cloth. The gun felt hot in Andrés' hand. His ears rang, not from the shot, but from the silence after. And then, slowly, he smiled. Not because it felt good, not because he was proud, but because it was finally over. All the waiting, the silence, the pretending. Now he knew what he was. Walk away. He wiped the gun, dropped the shell casing in the sewer, walked into the streetlight. Just like Mono said, killers walk. A security guard glanced at him and looked away just as fast. No one saw a killer. They saw a kid. Next morning, Mono handed him an envelope with 5 crisp bills inside. "That's yours," he said. "More than your mother ever made in a year." Andrés didn't count it. Didn't ask for more. He just said, "Who's next?" Mono blinked. A flicker of doubt, maybe even fear, passed through his eyes. The boy wasn't playing gangster. The boy was becoming death. That week, word spread. A kid, not older than 13, had dropped Carlos with surgical precision. No witnesses. No mistakes. No panic. The newspapers said it was a gang hit. The neighborhood knew better. They started whispering in corners. "Did you hear? The butcher's not a man. He's a kid. El Carnicero." The nickname stuck, not because he used a knife, but because he cut the soul from a man without flinching. Overnight, Andrés became a legend in the underworld. Adults nodded with respect. Older gangsters offered him drinks. Women twice his age flirted with him. But Andrés didn't smile, didn't celebrate, because with every nod, every whisper, every compliment, he felt the weight of something lost, something buried so deep he could no longer remember its name. That night, he stood on a rooftop, looking down at the city. He whispered the dead man's name. Carlos. And for a brief second, just one, he felt something behind his ribs shift. Not regret, not guilt, just echoes, like someone knocked on a door inside him, but no one was home. By the time he turned 14, Andrés was already a ghost story parents use to scare their children. Do your homework, or El Carnicero will come for you. But Andrés didn't kill for fun. He killed for precision, for contracts, for order in the chaos of a city ruled by shadows. His name moved faster than the police, faster than fear, faster than justice. Because El Carnicero didn't make noise. He made silence. Montage a hitman's routine. Small orange diamond drive-by shootings on scooters with silencers duct taped to cheap pistols. Small orange diamond a rooftop kill with a scope rifle made from scrap parts. Small orange diamond knives. Wires. Poison in a bottle of a Guardian. Small orange diamond one victim smothered with a hotel pillow never woke up. Andrés didn't stick to one method. He studied his prey like a hunter studies deer. Every move calculated, every breath measured. To him, death was math. At first, rival factions thought it was a hoax. A boy doing hits? Then they started losing lieutenants, then suppliers, then accountants. And the pattern was always the same. Clean kill, no prints, no witnesses. A small butcher's hook left beside the body. That was his signature, a twisted joke. As if to say, you were meat. I just did my job. One night, La Compañía handed Andrés a contract that even the older killers feared. A federal judge rumored to be aligning with DEA investigators. Andrés accepted, without blinking. He watched the judge for 5 days, memorized his patterns, found the weak link, a corrupt driver with a sick wife. The 6th day, Andrés climbed into the judge's armored SUV, dressed as a delivery boy, and waited in the trunk when the judge stepped inside. Bang, bang, 2 shots through the headrest. By the time his bodyguards reacted, Andrés was gone, back in the slums, eating arepas with hot sauce like it was any other day. Andrés never hurt children, never touched women, never accepted jobs against street vendors, addicts, or anyone poor like him. He had a code. But even codes can't keep blood off your hands. The more he killed, the more the darkness took root. Sometimes, late at night, he'd hear whispers, see shadows. He'd sit on his mattress, finger on the trigger of a pistol he slept with, sweating through nightmares. His mother appeared in dreams. So did the dog he killed. The man in the alley, Carlos, each with hollow eyes, each asking, do you even remember who you are? He didn't. One job took him to a rundown building where the target lived with his 7-year-old nephew. When Andrés entered with his gun drawn, the man begged for his life. Don't do this in front of the kid. Please. Andrés paused. The boy stood in the hallway, barefoot, wide-eyed, clutching a toy truck. They looked at each other for a moment that felt like a lifetime. Andrés lowered the gun, told the man, send the boy outside. He waited 5 minutes, then finished the job. When he left, the boy was still there, sitting on the curb, hugging the truck to his chest. They locked eyes again. Andrés didn't say a word, but inside, something cracked. La Compañía started calling him for the big jobs, political assassinations, inside jobs against traitors, executions of corrupt police officers who overstepped. He wasn't just a hitman anymore. He was a symbol, a message that the rules didn't apply, that death wore a child's face. They gave him more money, finer clothes, girls, cars, even tried to give him a fancy apartment uptown. He refused, still slept on a floor mat with a gun under his ribs, because deep down, he knew all of it was temporary, and because he only trusted one thing, silence. On his 15th birthday, he looked at himself in a cracked mirror. Same face, same eyes, but nothing behind them. He whispered to his reflection, "You're not Andrés. You're just the thing that kept him alive. He threw a birthday cake. Someone brought him out the window. It splattered on the street like a headshot. Ending beat, the legend grows. People began writing graffiti about him. El Carnicero no perdona. Children dared each other to find the alley where he one-shot 3 men in under 10 seconds. News outlets speculated about a Colombian child soldier the government denied existed. But Andrés didn't care about fame. He didn't even care about money. He only cared about one thing, not going back to being powerless. Because in Bogotá, power is the only prayer that gets answered. And Andrés had already prayed with bullets. The playground was still wet from a morning rain. Rusty swings creaked in the wind. Soccer balls bounced off chipped concrete. And then a scream, not from a horror movie, from real life, from a teacher's lips as she saw the blood pooling beneath the jungle gym. A boy's body, no older than 14, lay face down in the dirt. 2 bullets in his back. The killer? Gone. Some swore he was a ghost. Others? They knew. They'd seen his face before. Just another kid, just like them. Andrés never wanted to go back to school. He had outgrown classrooms long before he picked up a gun. But this time, school wasn't about books. It was about payback. A rival gang had recruited young lookouts and peddlers from inside a public school. One of them, a loudmouth 14-year-old named Julio El Radamea, had stolen from La Compañía. Worse, he laughed about it, called Andrés a myth, said the butcher was just some junkie with a lucky shot. Mono gave the green light. The message was simple. Find him. Make it public. Andrés put on an old uniform, shaved his face, blended in. He walked through the school gates at 10:45 a.m. No one stopped him. No one suspected. He sat on a bench outside the computer lab, waited, watched Julio laugh with his friends near the water cooler, waited some more, until the bell rang for recess. Julio ran out with his group, heading toward the soccer court. He never saw Andrés coming. 2 steps. Gun drawn from inside a binder. Bang. Bang. Julio collapsed on the gravel, gasping for breath. The playground erupted in panic. Screams. Teachers crying. Kids diving behind bushes. Andrés? He walked, dropped the gun in a trash can near the exit, disappeared into the city like a whisper. The murder made headlines by nightfall. Boy shot dead at school. Killer may be same teen hitman known as El Carnicero. The government issued a statement. The mayor visited the school. But no arrests were made, because no one could prove it. And even if they could, who would dare testify? One student, a 9-year-old named Camila, told a counselor, "I saw his eyes. He looked like he wasn't scared, like he wasn't even there." When asked to describe him, she drew a picture, just 2 black circles for eyes, and a smile that didn't belong to a kid. Mono watched the news footage with silent approval. "He's not just killing for us," he said. "He's building the brand." Some lieutenants were uneasy. It's too public, too reckless. Mono lit a cigarette. The message was sent. The city knows. We own the streets. We own the playgrounds. And in a twisted way, they did. After the hit, Andrés sat alone in a warehouse with peeling walls and a mattress on the floor. He stared at his shoes. Still had specks of playground dust on them. He brushed it off with his sleeve, lit a cigarette. No shaking, no guilt, no joy, just numb. He muttered to himself. He shouldn't have talked, as if that made it okay. From that day on, the name El Carnicero wasn't just whispered. It was etched into the fear of Bogotá's youth. Teachers quit in protest. Kids faked illnesses to stay home. Gang recruiters used Andrés as a story. You could be like him. You could be legend. He wasn't just a hitman now. He was a myth. A boogeyman who wore a school uniform and carried death in his backpack. After Julio's execution, the rules of the streets shifted. No one was safe. Not in bars. Not in cars. Not in churches. not even in schools. And Andrés? He didn't look back, because looking back meant remembering who he was before all this. And there was nothing left in that direction but ghosts. Some nights, Andrés would wake up in a cold sweat, his fingers twitching like they were still pulling a trigger. In his dreams, the faces came back. Carlos, Julio, the dog, his mother, the man she brought home, the boy with the toy truck, all staring, none blinking. One night he screamed so loudly the walls shook. He grabbed his pistol, cocked and loaded, and pointed it at the mirror. What he saw wasn't a killer. It was a kid, a scared, skinny, lost kid. So he did what he always did. He lit a cigarette, snorted a line of coke, and waited for the silence to come back. At 15, Andrés was using more than just bullets to cope. He started with alcohol, then glue, then pills, then bazuco, the same toxic drug his mother used to chase the demons out of her head. Funny, he used to hate her for it. Now he was her, just faster, just louder, just more precise. It was a Wednesday. Nothing special. He was walking down a cracked sidewalk near La Perseverancia Market when he heard a street performer singing an old folk song. Mama, ¿dónde estás? En la sombra mi purdy. Mama, where are you? I got lost in the shadow. Andrés stopped. His hand reached for his gun. Out of instinct, not fear. But the music hit something he couldn't shoot. He stood there, trembling. And then, tears. Not loud, not dramatic. Just hot, silent tears rolling down the face of a boy with 40 confirmed kills. No one noticed. And that made it worse. By 16, Andrés had started talking to people who weren't there. He'd whisper to shadows, laugh at voices in the static. Once, Mono caught him speaking to an empty chair. Who were you talking to? Andrés smiled. To the only person who never left me. Mono stared for a moment, then walked away. But that was the beginning of the end. Because Mono could smell it now. The madness, the unraveling, the cracks in the armor. Andrés kept a notebook. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't plans. It was just words that spilled out when his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Some pages read like screams. I see them. All of them. Even the ones I forgot. They won't let me sleep. The silence is getting louder. One page simply said, I want to go back. But there's no back. Only down. There was a girl. Of course there was. Lucia. Brown eyes. Loud laugh. Worked at a tiny empanada stand near the plaza. She didn't know who he was. She just liked his quiet, his manners, his scars. Andrés tried. He tried to be normal. Bought her flowers. Walked her home. Smiled when she asked about his past. But it couldn't last. One night, a rival crew spotted him with her. Tried to shoot him from across the street. Lucia got grazed. She screamed his name, not Andrés, but Carnicero. She knew now, and she never came back. He didn't talk about it, but the pain had to go somewhere. Andrés started cutting himself, not to die, to feel something. He carved tiny marks on his thigh, one for every kill he could remember. By the end of that year, his skin looked like a scoreboard, but he still couldn't feel forgiveness. Only numbness. Only wait. Mono finally sat him down. You're losing it, kid. Can't be a killer with ghosts in your head. Andrés smiled. They keep me company. Mono sighed. You think that's strength? You're one mistake away from being a problem. Andrés leaned in, cold and calm. Then don't give me a reason to become your problem. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. One early morning, Andrés broke into a crumbling old chapel. No priest, no candles, just rot and pigeons. He sat in the first pew, looked up at the cracked statue of Christ, and whispered, You died for sinners, right? What about monsters? No answer, just silence. And for once, he didn't feel like the butcher. He felt like the sacrifice. That night, He sat with his back against the wall, looking at the stars. He pulled out a bullet, held it in his palm, then looked at the sky and asked, "If I put this in my head, will the voices stop?" But the stars didn't answer. They never did. And so Andrés put the bullet back in his pocket, lit another cigarette, and waited for the next job. You can kill strangers without blinking. You can kill enemies without regret. But when family bleeds you, there's no gun strong enough to shoot the wound shut. Andrés learned that the hard way, because betrayal, it didn't come from a rival cartel. It didn't come from the streets. It came from someone who once held him in their arms. His uncle. Flashback, the only family left. When Andrés was younger, just before his mother vanished for good, she left him once with a man she called Tío Pacho. He was her older half-brother, a mechanic, tough hands, greasy fingers, but kind eyes. Back then, Pacho gave Andrés a sandwich in a comic book. Didn't talk much, didn't judge. He just said, "You don't have to be like her. You could be something else." It was the only time Andrés ever heard someone speak like that. He never forgot it, even after the blood, even after the bullets. Somehow, he still remembered that sandwich. Reunion years later, a trap in disguise. Years later, Andrés was 16 and infamous. By then, El Carnicero was untouchable. But one night, he got a message through a street contact. "Tío Pacho's asking to see you. Says it's urgent. Says it's about your mother." That word, mother, hit like a crowbar to the chest. He hadn't spoken in years. So he went. Scene, garage of ghosts. The old mechanic shop smelled like gasoline and old regrets. Pacho looked older now, grayer, slower, but his eyes were the same. He didn't flinch when Andrés walked in, pistol visible at his side. "Still carrying metal, huh?" Pacho said. "Can't carry trust," Andrés replied. They sat. Pacho poured him a drink, talked about the past, about his mother, about how she died. Not from drugs, but a beating from someone Andrés had once worked for. That part made his hand tighten around the glass. Then Pacho said the words, "You don't have to keep doing this. I've been talking to a man from the police. He can get you out." The reveal, the setup, Andrés stood up instantly. "You what?" "He's not just a cop," Pacho said. "He's a good man. He can protect you. A new ID. You disappear." "You sold me out?" "No," Pacho insisted. "I'm saving you." But Andrés wasn't hearing it, because outside the garage, just barely visible in the broken mirror, a car pulled up, unmarked, civilian, 2 men inside. He knew that look. Cops. Andrés didn't hesitate. He ducked, drew, fired 2 shots through the wall. The mirror exploded. The men outside dove for cover. Andrés spun toward Pacho. His uncle didn't move, didn't reach for a weapon, just stared at him with wet eyes and said, "I didn't want you to die like an animal." Andrés didn't shoot. Couldn't. Instead, he ran out the back, through the alley, disappearing into the city's veins like a virus escaping a syringe. Back in his safe house, Andrés collapsed onto the floor. He didn't bleed that night, but something inside him broke for good. He whispered to himself, "No more family, no more names, just silence." Mono came that night. He had already heard. Word always traveled fast when blood was spilled, or almost spilled. "You okay?" Andrés didn't answer, just asked, "You ever think I'll die old?" Mono shook his head. "Old? No, but maybe famous." Andrés smirked. "Famous doesn't bury you any softer." A week later, Pacho disappeared. Rumor said he fled Bogotá. Some said he was killed. Others said he vanished into the jungle with a new name. Andrés never went looking, but he left something at the garage door one night. A butcher hook wrapped in cloth. No message, just memory, a warning, and maybe goodbye. Later that night, Mono told one of the lieutenants, "I used to think I made him." "Didn't you?" Mono stared at a photo of Andres, freshly taken from a job. His eyes looked blacker than ever. "No," he said, "we didn't make him. We just gave the devil a gun." Andres was now alone, truly alone. No family, no home, no name that belonged to him. Just the weight of 47 kills, and the sound of his uncle's voice echoing. "You don't have to be like her." But it was too late, because the city didn't care who you could have been. It only respected what you became. And Andres had become a myth built out of blood. By 17, Andres was no longer called El Carnicero behind closed doors. Inside La Compañía's upper ranks, he had a new name, El Dorado de Sangre, the golden boy of blood. Why? Because he was worth more dead than some men were alive. They said one look from him could silence rivals, that he killed faster than a prayer could finish. And unlike other sicarios, he never asked for favors, never negotiated, never ran. He just looked you in the eye and pulled the trigger. Montage, the level up of violence. Small blue diamond Medellin. Took out a Colombian senator's bodyguard with a sniper rifle from a moving train. Small blue diamond Quito, Ecuador. Slipped past embassy surveillance to poison a double agent in the men's restroom. Small blue diamond Panama City. Car bomb, built by hand. Took out a DEA informant as he kissed his daughter goodbye. Small blue diamond Caracas. 2 bodies found tied together in an alley. No eyes, no tongues. A note the butcher sends her guards. His passport had no stamps, but his legend crossed every border. Andres was finally summoned to meet Don Mateo, the unseen kingpin of La Compañía. It happened in a villa overlooking the Caribbean. White suits, gold watches, Cuban cigars. But when Andres entered, everything went silent. Don Mateo stood, walked up to him, and said, "So you're the little ghost, the one who makes men wet themselves with a whisper." Andres didn't smile, didn't blink. "I'm whatever you paid for." Don Mateo laughed like thunder. "Then I want more." Don Mateo didn't just praise him. He paid him, lavishly, a villa near Cartagena, a custom Glock with his initials engraved, a briefcase with $100,000 in clean bills, a car, matte black, bulletproof, and silent. Andres took it all, but he didn't stay in the villa, didn't drive the car, didn't open the briefcase, because part of him didn't believe it was real. The other part knew everything real gets taken away eventually. In 6 months, Andres was sent on a mission that would echo through 2 governments. A high-level Colombian intelligence official had started feeding names to U.S. prosecutors. They wanted him gone. The official's compound was under 24/7 surveillance. Guards, drones, dogs, lasers. Andres spent 4 days studying the sewer routes nearby. On the 5th night, he crawled through 200 meters of sludge with a plastic-wrapped pistol in his mouth. He emerged in the man's garden, shot him twice in the throat while he watered his orchids, vanished before the dogs started barking. By dawn, Colombia had a new legend. The butcher walks through walls. Back in the city, Don Mateo gave Andres a watch. A Rolex. Gold. Heavy. "You've earned time, my boy." Andres looked at it. "Time's the one thing I can't kill." Don Mateo grinned. "That's why we all fear you." Inside La Compañía, not everyone was celebrating. Older killers, hardened men with 50-plus body counts, began whispering. "Why does he get the spotlight? He's just a kid. He's reckless. One wrong move, and he brings us down." Andres heard every word. Didn't care. He knew the truth. Loyalty is currency, and his balance was running low. One night, Andres was sent to eliminate a business rival, but the target's 10-year-old son ran out screaming when he heard gunshots. Andres froze. The boy looked just like he did once. Same haircut, same scars, same fear. He lowered the weapon, but a backup gunman, nervous and high, panicked. Bang! The boy fell. Andrés turned, slow and cold, shot the backup twice in the head, then walked out without saying a word. Word spread, not about the mission, but the boy. Even in La Compañía, there were lines. Don Mateo called Andrés in. "You're making people nervous." "I didn't kill the kid," Andrés replied. "Doesn't matter. It happened on your job." There was silence. Then Mateo added, "You're a legend now. That means the rules don't protect you. They bind you." Back at his safe house, Andrés stared at the Rolex. It didn't tick. He hadn't wound it once. He smashed it against the wall, watched the gears fall like tiny organs on the floor. He whispered, "Time still not dead." Then he loaded his pistol and sat by the window, waiting. Andrés was now La Compañía's most feared asset. He had everything, and yet nothing, because deep down he felt it. The air shifting, the eyes watching, the long knives being sharpened. Andrés was too valuable to kill, but too dangerous to keep forever. And in the world of cartels, love doesn't get you killed. Loyalty does. It started with whispers, not on the streets, in the boardrooms. La Compañía's elite stopped saying his name out loud. They started using code. Package Alpha, the Ghost in Black, the Storm. Because when a weapon becomes too sharp, you don't hold it, you dispose of it. Andrés knew something was off the night. He found a phone in his car, one he hadn't put there. It vibrated once. A single message flashed. "They're coming." No number, no trace, just 6 letters that made his blood run cold. He looked in the rear-view mirror, saw nothing, but his instinct screamed, "This is it." 2 days earlier, Don Mateo sat with 5 regional bosses in a penthouse suite above Medellin. "The boy's becoming unstable," one said. "He's a legend," another protested. Mateo stared at the city lights and said, "Legends burn longer when they die young." He lit a cigar, inhaled. He knows too much. He's killed too many. If the government flips him, we're done. One man asked quietly, "What if he sees it coming?" Mateo looked up. "Then make sure it's clean." That same night, Andrés was asleep in a safe house near the city's edge. 2:03 a.m. He heard a floorboard creak. Not outside. Inside. He didn't sit up. Didn't move. He just reached under the bed and pulled the trigger. Boom. A man's body thudded to the floor, his silenced pistol skidding across the tile. Andrés rolled to the side as another figure opened fire through the window. Glass exploded. He returned 3 shots, fast, clean, precise. Silence. 1 hitman dead. 1 vanished. Andrés was already packing before the smoke cleared. He didn't take the car. Too obvious. He walked barefoot through alleyways until dawn, burned his IDs, flushed his SIM card, smashed his backup phone under a tire. He knew the rules. If La Compañía wanted you dead, there was no safe. Only gone. He sat in an abandoned building, listening to rats scurry between the walls. So this is how it ends. Not in glory, not in fire, but hunted. He thought about Mono, about Pacho, about his mother. Every name that got him here either vanished or turned on him. And now, he was just a bullet with no direction. Turns out, it was Mono who signed off on the hit. The one man Andrés trusted like a brother. But Mono saw the writing on the wall. Kids becoming a god. Gods attract lightning. He gave the order. Not out of hate, out of fear, out of survival. Andrés reached out to one man. Nico, a former driver turned low-level boss. They met behind a fish market at midnight. Nico looked around nervously. "You shouldn't be here." " Neither should you," Andrés replied. "But I need answers." Nico lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "They've greenlit you. Every sicario in the city's got your face. Who signed it? Mateo, Mano, everyone. Andres just nodded. Tell them next time. Send more than 2. Nico didn't reply. Just handed him a duffel bag. Inside, cash, a new passport, a silenced pistol, and something else, a location. The coordinates led to a warehouse outside Cali. A jet sat on the runway, single pilot. No questions asked. One last job, the note said, and then freedom. Andre stared at it for a long time. Do I run, or do I burn it all down? He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He just showed up at the warehouse the next night. Rain poured. Lights flickered. He stood in the dark, finger on the trigger, because he knew if this was a way out, it was lined with bodies. If it was a trap, he'd drag them all to hell with him. And as thunder cracked the sky above, Andres whispered to the storm, "Come, get me." The warehouse sat in the jungle's throat. No guards, no dogs, just a flickering floodlight, and a single word painted on the rusted hangar door. Salida, exit. Andres approached with a pistol tucked under his shirt, a blade taped his thigh, and 2 bullets carved with initials. One for Mano, one for Don Mateo. Rain fell like machine gun fire. His boots splashed in the mud as he stepped inside. He wasn't there to fly. He was there to finish the war. The hangar smelled like fuel and betrayal. A private jet hummed on the strip outside. A man stood at the far end of the room, silhouetted by the blinking lights. Mano, older, colder, still clean-shaved like a soldier. He clapped slowly as Andres approached. "You made it. I knew you would." Andres didn't smile. "You sent them to kill me." "I sent them to test you. You passed." He tossed a duffel bag at Andres' feet. "Inside your freedom. New name, new life. You disappear forever." And in return, Mano's eyes narrowed. One last job. Don Mateo had a final problem. A rising political star in Bogotá calling for cartel exposure, foreign investigations, and military sweeps. If he rose any higher, La Compañía's empire would crack. Andres' mission? Take him out. Publicly. Brutally. A final message. And in return, no more targets. No more ghosts. No more Butcher, Mano said. You vanish. You win. 3 days later, the man stood on a stage, speaking to a crowd of 2,000, praising unity, condemning corruption, calling out cartels by name. Andres watched from the roof of a nearby building, his scope trained on the podium. One breath, one trigger, one ending, and yet he hesitated. The man-son had followed him on stage, a small boy with wide eyes and a Colombian flag draped around his shoulders. For a split second, Andres saw himself, the child he used to be, the child before the blood. His finger hovered over the trigger, but he didn't pull it. He turned to leave, decision made. That's when he heard the click. Behind him, a silencer. He spun, but it was too late. Bang! The bullet grazed his shoulder, spun him sideways. He fired blindly, then leapt off the ledge, crashing through a lower rooftop awning. Broken ribs, fractured wrist. He crawled into the alley, blood soaking his shirt. Mano had sent someone to kill him. Again, the job was never real. It was a setup, a way to draw him into the open and finish the legend. He limped 3 blocks, hailed a stolen taxi, collapsed in the back seat. He told the driver one word. Mountains. They drove for hours, into the jungle, into the dark, into the unknown. Every bump sent fire through his bones. But Andrés stayed silent. He knew this was the only way out now. Days later, bleeding and fevered, he stumbled upon a tiny shack high in the hills. An old woman took him in. No questions. She boiled herbs, cleaned his wounds, whispered prayers over him at night. For weeks, Andrés drifted between life and death. He saw faces in the smoke, heard names in the wind. His mother, Carlos, Julio, Pacho, Lucia. all asking the same question. Do you still remember who you are? When the fever broke, Andrés opened his eyes to the first real sunrise he'd seen in years. The old woman handed him a bowl of broth and said, "The blood doesn't wash off, but it can stop dripping." He didn't answer, but he kept eating. Because maybe she was right. Back in Bogotá, La Compañía began to collapse. The political figure Andrés didn't kill, he didn't back down. He invited foreign agents in, declared open war on organized crime. Don Mateo disappeared. Some said he died in a shootout. Others claimed he fled to Venezuela. Mano, he was found 3 weeks later in his villa, shot once through each eye. No signs of struggle, just a butcher's hook on the floor beside his slippers. No one knows who did it. Some say Andrés returned for revenge. Others say it was karma. Some claim El Carnicero died in the jungle, buried under an anonymous grave. But every now and then, a rival cartel enforcer turns up dead in some far-off town. No witnesses, no prints, just a small butcher's hook left on their chest. Andrés was never seen again, but stories of him travel farther than any passport. From prison cells to jungle camps, from Venezuela to Mexico to Spain. They whisper his name in low tones. The Butcher of Bogotá, the boy who killed kings, the ghost that walked between bullets. Because in the end, he was never just a hitman. He was a mirror of what the world does to its poor. It's broken, it's forgotten, and he didn't want your sympathy. He just wanted one thing, to never be powerless again.